Hi, everyone. So in 2018, Unity decided to give some extra love to all the level designers and to the artists among us. Because what happens sometimes is that the artists, especially the ones that are not too technical, are a bit scared to jump into the editor because they think that it's not too friendly for artists. So I just want to prove you that this is not true anymore, especially in 2018, because we have new tools especially for this. So just a bit about myself. My name is Alessia, and I'm a technical evangelist at Unity, and I cover the Europe, Middle East, and Africa areas. So just to have an idea, how many of you here are level designers? Okay, how many artists? And how many programmers? Okay, that's good. And how many of you do a bit of everything? Okay, that's good. So, okay, the idea here is that, well, I have my own idea for a level, and I want to put it into the engine. But maybe I don't want to focus on what I have in my mind already, so maybe I don't have a too clear one idea, so I want to kind of have a feel for my idea before I perfect it, before I make it into an actual 3D model. So what I would normally do before Unity 2018 is I would take game objects and I would make a scene out of them. So for example, I can take a plane, and that would be my floor. And then I take a game object, and then becomes the wall, and I stretch it, and I shrink it. And then I take another game object, and I make a different wall. And maybe at some point, I want to make a door in between. And what happens is that I have to shrink everything again, and then move it, and then it's just a mess all the time. So with 2018, there is an alternative to this. Some of you might have already heard of this, and it's ProBuilder. So ProBuilder is a tool for level design that allows you to create levels and prototypes really quickly without ever leaving the engine. So you can do everything from within Unity. So the history of ProBuilder is that it was a tool, an asset that was available on the asset store, and it was a paid asset, so you had to buy it in order to be able to use it. But we realized how many developers were using it, and they really needed it, and they were really liking it. So what we decided to do is we decided to acquire ProBuilder. So now it's part of Unity, and it's completely free, and you can use it for free. So I'm just going to go into the editor, and I'm just going to show you what ProBuilder is like. So for this demo, I am going to use Angry Bots 2. So some of you might know of this already, especially the ones of you who have used Unity for a long time. It's basically a remaster of a demo that we used to use a few years ago. I'm going to press play, and I'm going to show you what it does. So it's basically, we have our character that plays around. So we have our spider there, and we can hit it. By the way, this uses the lightweight render pipeline. So this is the new scriptable render pipeline. There are two available. Well, there is only one available at the moment, and it's the lightweight one. But we're going to have the HD available soon. So also, as you can see here, this hologram, this is a shader, and it's made using ShaderGraph, which I'm going to cover in a bit. So here we have our level. At this point, we want to use ProBuilder on it. So to get ProBuilder, you just go on Window, Package Manager, and here you have all the packages available, and ProBuilder is here at the bottom. So you just download it. In my case, I already have it in the project, so I can only update it. And then to open ProBuilder, you go to Tools, ProBuilder, and ProBuilder Window. So this will open this little window here. I'm just going to dock it. And there are multiple different options, different tools that you can use. I'm going to click New Shape, and this will create a cube. So I click Build Cube. And what I can do at this point is I have these different tools here. This is the Object tool. Then we have the Vertex, Edge, and Face. So at this point, maybe I want to select the face and move it around. Or another thing that I might want to do is to extrude the face. So I click here on Extrude Faces. And by the way, one thing that I can do is I either click on the name of the tool or on the plus that is here, and this will open different settings for the tool. So if I click the plus, then I have distance, and I can choose how much I want to extrude of. So I'm going to click 1, and then I'm going to do it again, and I can do it for multiple faces as well. And now at this point, maybe I want to create a door here. So what I do is I create a new shape, and I have another cube, and I make it taller, I make it deeper. Ooh, sorry, that was not planned. Okay, I build, and I select the object. I move it onto my door where I want it to be. And at this point, if you're an artist, you would know that what you want to do in this case is to use the subtraction, so the Boolean tool and subtract. So there is this option in ProBuilder as well. You go on Tools, ProBuilder, Experimental, Boolean, and it will open this little window, which at the moment is experimental. And what you do is you select the two objects that you want to subtract, and then Operation, you go to Subtraction, and Apply. And what happens here is I hide these two objects, and I have my door. So there's no any need of stretching and shrinking game objects and having to move all your walls around anymore. So this is just an example. I'm going to remove these objects for now, and I'm going to jump into the demo. So at this point, maybe I have this map, and I want to build something in this area. So I did it before, because I wouldn't have the time to do it here. I'm just going to say it active. So this is my ProBuilder scene. Everything here is built using ProBuilder. And maybe what I want to do at this point is to build like a ramp or some stairs here. And if we want to build some stairs using just game objects, we would have multiple game objects, and we would just enlarge them. We would stretch them. With ProBuilder, using new shape, you can also select stair. So I'm going to have my stairs here. I'm going to drag it a bit more into the engine, into the scene. There you go. So what I can do at this point, I'm just going to rotate my stairs approximatively, and I'm going to try and place them. I'm going to try and put them into place as best as I can. And I can also modify different parameters of the stairs. For example, the depth. I want it to be longer, or I want it to be higher or wider. And I can move these things around. But as you can see, it's not too precise. Like, I'm not sure that it's going to be perfectly on the floor, for example. Maybe in this case it is, but it's not always that easy. So what I can do is I can use ProGrid, which is another tool released with ProBuilder. So to do that, I'm going to go on Tools, ProGrids window, and this is going to open this little window here. If I click it, it will open this tool, which is to snap. So if I toggle snap on, what happens is that I will be able to move by using a grid system, so it will be much more accurate. So I'm just going to build these stairs now. Maybe another thing that I would want to do is, I don't know, I might want to bevel this area. I might want to not have this ceiling to be so completely flat. So what I do is I select the face tool, I select the face, and then I look for the bevel tool, which is here. And I click on plus so that I can see the options. And maybe I want the distance to be much higher, like 0.7. And this is the result. So there's many things that you can do with ProBuilder. And either you're an artist or not, you can see all. It's really easy to understand from this window here. The last thing that I want to show you about ProBuilder is, for example, I'm going to go look for this barrel here. So this is a game object that is in the scene. It's a 3D model that is not made using ProBuilder. But what I can do is I can select the object, and maybe once I'm in the engine, I want to modify it. So I can use this tool here. This is called ProBuilder Eyes. And if I click it, what happens is that it gets divided into different faces, edges, and vertices. So I can select different faces, and I can edit it using all the ProBuilder tools. So, well, in this case, I have the snap on, so this is why it's acting like this. So if I toggle snap off, then I will be able to do something much better than this, of course. But yeah, that's what I wanted to show you about ProBuilder. So now let's go back into the presentation and see what's next. So ProBuilder, as I mentioned, it comes with other different, I don't know why the presentation looks like this, sorry. The resolution is wrong, okay. So ProBuilder comes with other tools. One of them is ProGrids and one of them is Polybrush. I will tell you in a second what they are. But basically, ProBuilder will allow you for very rapid prototyping from within the engine. So if what you used to do before was to create different game objects and maybe then having to test them manually, what you can do now is that you create them all together just using the ProBuilder tools. And then you can turn this whole scene that you created into a model, and then you can push it into Maya, and we're going to look at that in a second. Another thing that you can do to improve the accuracy of your scene is to use ProGrids. So this is something that is not together with ProBuilder, but you can get it for free from the asset store. And it will toggle on these sort of grids that will allow you to snap all the ProBuilder objects into places. And another tool that I didn't show you is Polybrush. This is currently in beta. But what it does is that it allows you to create some really simple sculpture from within the engine. So you will be able to sculpt using all the vertices that are made using ProBuilder from within the engine itself. So if you haven't tried it, go give it a try. And where to get these tools from? ProBuilder is available on Package Manager. This is something new that we have in 2018, and it's a new package release system that we released, and it should make it much easier to release updates for all the assets that you have that are released by Unity, and also to download something from within Unity. So, for example, there you have Cinemachine, you have TextMesh Pro, or a lightweight render pipeline. ProGrids and Polybrush at the moment are still on the asset store, but you should be able to get them on Package Manager soon. And again, all this is completely free, because as I mentioned, it used to be an asset that you had to pay for, but now we acquired it, so this is part of Unity now, and you can get it completely for free. So the next step, at this point we have our scene made with ProBuilder. And what we would do normally is we would recreate this prototype in Maya. Maybe, I don't know, we would have two screens, and we would have the Unity scene, and we would have Maya or 3ds Max or whatever 3D modeling software you use. And then you would try and recreate as best as you can your prototype. What we can do now instead is we use the FBX Exporter. So we created this ProBuilder scene. We can make it a prefab, and then we drag this prefab onto Maya. So at this point, we don't need to recreate it from scratch. We can just use what we've made in Unity. And since this uses something that is made by Unity in collaboration with Autodesk, all the components, and it's also a prefab, so it preserves all the components, and everything will be also ported onto Maya or 3ds Max. So with this switch from the two platforms, you will still be able to keep all the components. So let's just take a look at how this works. So I have my 3D model here, which is this white box. To get FBX Exporter, you go onto the Asset Store, so Window Asset Store, type FBX Exporter. It will be the Unity Technologies one. You download it, and this will make available Edit, Project Settings, FBX Export menu. So once you open this, you will have the 3D application of your choice, that is Autodesk. So it can be Maya or 3ds Max if you have it installed. And then you just click Install Unity Integration, and this will automatically go onto your 3D modeling software, and it will install the integration. And then you will be able to click on your prefab, on your game object, sorry. And if you right-click, you will have these extra options, and you want to select Convert to Link Prefab Instance. So it will open this Settings menu. I'm just going to convert it. And this will create a prefab, which is here, and an OBJ file, which is what I want to pass onto Maya. So what I do now, I go into Maya. So what I want to do is I go on File. After I installed the plugin, I will have this menu available with the Unity logo, and I can click on Import, and I select my FBX. Click Open, and I will have my model here straight away. So as an artist, at this point, I will add all the details. I'm not an artist, so I'm just going to I'm just going to show you what an artist did. And I'm going to make this visible and hide this. Oops, sorry. And this is the final model. So what I want is to move this finished level art onto this Unity FBX Export set. So everything that is inside the Unity FBX Export set will be ported onto Unity. So this is literally everything that we need to do. Also, another thing that you might want to do is, if you go on Windows, Settings, Preferences, and then go on Linear, you want to choose Meter, because that will make it match to Unity measurement system. So that's everything. After you've done that, you simply click on Unity Export, and it will pass it automatically onto Unity. So I've done that before, so I'm just going to show you the final result. So I'm going to disable this and enable this. And this would be my final level within Unity. So that's everything that I had to do. And all the prefabs are also kept. So if I had anything applied to it, or any material, everything would stay in the game object. So going back onto the presentation, we have this FBX Exporter, and it basically allows us to, as I mentioned, it takes the game object that we have, we port it, we turn it into a prefab, and it will save all the components, all the information that we have about this object, and then we pass it onto Maya. And what happens after is we are able to import it back with just one click. So it will automatically update all the information, and you don't lose anything. Also, it's much more useful in the case in which you want to take your character and you want to make it walk around the scene that you created. Where to get this from? As I mentioned, it's available on the Asset Store. So you get it, you just open the Asset Store window, type it there, FBX Exporter, and you get it for free. And as I mentioned, it's completely free again. So this is thanks to a collaboration with Autodesk that we've done. So it's available on 3ds Max and Maya. At this point, we want to add the materials. So we created our whole scene. We have everything available. What we want to do is we want to improve the way it looks. So we want to add the shaders, maybe. What we do if we're not shader, if we know shader programming, we type some code and we write the shaders ourselves. if we are not familiar with shader programming, or maybe we're put off by it, or maybe we're technical artists, but we don't know how to write shaders, we use ShaderGraph. So this is also useful if you do know how to use shader programming, because it will allow you to see everything straight away. So you have the preview of each node, and it's something that it's super useful in case you need to, you want to see what it's going to look like before you finish your shader. So let's go into the editor and see how that works. So I'm just going to open, for example, the hologram that we had here. If I click on it, I will know that this uses ShaderGraph, because if I go on the material, it will be part of this graphs menu with lowercase g. And this contains all the shader graphs that are in the project. So I will be able to pick it from there. I can open it by clicking on the cog and going on to Edit Shader. And this will open the ShaderGraph window for me. And as I mentioned, every node is visual. So you will be able to see how the shader looks like at any point in time. So before jumping into what a shader does and the way it looks, because this might be a bit too complex if you have never written a shader or if you've never looked at ShaderGraph before, I am going to create a shader myself, and I'm going to show you how to do that. So we go on Create, Shader, and PBR graph, and this creates a new shader graph. So I open it, and I will have this node, which is called PBR Master. So this is the node where all the nodes that we create that connect to this node will output. So this is the very final node. So we will see the very preview of the shader in this window here. And we can also see it from here. So what we want to do at this point is we want to create a new node. To do that, you simply right-click, don't know if you can see it, and create node. And then you will be able to type in whatever kind of node you want to create. So for example, I'm just going to create a color. And I have my color here. And I want to make it red. And I could straight away get the output from here and connect it onto my final node. But I want to show you how a normal node works with input and output. So I'm going to create another node, which is called Fresnel effect. So this one, for example, it creates some sort of rim around our shader. And we have inputs and outputs. So what we want to do at this point, I want to multiply the color red by this Fresnel effect. So I create a new node that is multiply. I drag it. And the output of the color will be the input of my first input of multiply. And the output of the Fresnel effect will be the first input, the second input of multiply. So at this point, I have an output that I can take, and I'm going to turn into my emission here. So this is the preview of the way the shader is going to look like. So at this point, maybe I want to also add a texture to it. So I'm going to create a node. And it's going to be a texture 2D, a sample to texture 2D. And I'm going to pick from here the texture that I want. For example, I want to texture a barrel. And I'm going to get the texture, and the output would be the RGB. And then I drag it onto the albedo. And this will be the final effect of my shader. So I save this, close my shader, and go find a barrel. So for example, this one. And I can change the shader of it the normal way you would change a shader. So go on Shader, Graphs, and New Shader Graph, which is the way I called it. And I basically added this rim effect to all the barrels in the scene. So this is how to create a really simple shader. Now maybe we want to look at how a shader that is already made works. So I'm going to go to this door that has, we kind of want to make it look like if the door is closed, we see this kind of effect. And maybe at some point in the game, we will be able to kill many different spiders, and that will open the door. So at the moment, I want to give this effect where the door is closed. So I'm going to click on the door. Here I have my shader graph, which is a locked door graph. I can also get it from Select Shader, and it will show it from the project. And then I click on Open Shader Editor, and I have my shader here. So what I want to do at this point, I can take a look around at how it works. So I have, it's very intuitive. So I have my multiply, and then that will create, in this case, a yellow color, and it will go all to output to the PBR Master. So I have my final node here. And what I can do at this point, for example, is I have a slider here that changes the kind of like the shape of this shader. So maybe I want to change it like this. What I do is I click on Save Asset. And then the shape has changed. Maybe I want it to be smaller, like this. Save Asset, and I can see the difference straight away. But another thing that I might want to do is to see this from the inspector. So what happens is I right-click on this slider, and I go to Convert to Property. And this will create a property called Vector1. And I have it here. Well, I have two in this case. And what I do is I save, go on to Unity again. And then if I click on this door, on the shader, I expand. And I will have all the properties here. And another thing that I can do is I have this Vector1. And ooh, that went far. So what I do is I can simply change the value of the slider from here. And I will be able to basically use a shader like normally from the inspector itself. So going back to my graph, another thing that I might want to do, and I've done it before, is to add a scan line. So maybe I want it to look like it's kind of a hologram, this door, so that I give it more effect to show that the door is going to be closed, and I want to be able to open it once I kill all the enemies. So here I have my inputs, and here I have my output of the scan line. Again, if we want to look at how this scan line is made, we have a sample texture 2D, and we have the texture that we just uploaded onto the node. Then tiling and offset multiply another texture, which is the scan line, and then we do the timing mechanic to make it move. So now I get the output of this, and I want to drag it as this add. So it's going to be my second value of add. So I just drag it. And I basically added this scan line effect to my graph. So I click on Save Asset. And this will basically be included into my final shader. So a few other things that use ShaderGraph in this level. For example, we have this conveyor belt. This uses ShaderGraph. And, well, you can tell because, for example, it's animated, and it's animated from the editor, so we don't need to press play. So these are shader. Other shaders that we're using here are, as I mentioned, these hologram, or we have other holograms here, or the screens. So these all uses ShaderGraph. Oh, also the spider should use ShaderGraph. So you will be able to click on the body and be able to see this from here. So we can take a look at how everything works. And it basically uses the same terminology as writing a shader. So everything will jump straight from shader programming to this, if you're familiar with it, or it will allow you to understand how everything works just by using ShaderGraph. And as I mentioned, it uses these previews, so at any point in the graph, you will be able to see where everything is going, and if you don't like something, you just remove the connection between the two nodes. So I'm just going to go back into the presentation. So as I mentioned, ShaderGraph is a visual node-based shader creation tool. In this case, it works with the scriptable render pipeline. So if you want to use ShaderGraph, you will have to select from the template, in this case, the lightweight render pipeline, because it's the only one that is available at the moment. But we will make the HD available soon. So you will be able to use ShaderGraph with both of them. At the moment, it's not available with the default render pipeline, so you will need to customize it yourself. Another thing that you can do is you can customize, you can create some new render pipelines, and ShaderGraph will be working with that straight away. And another thing that I didn't show you is that you can take any node that is already there, and you can make it into a custom node. So you can basically write your own nodes. To get ShaderGraph, you can get it from the package manager, something that I didn't show you again. I'm just going to go back into the editor. So here you have window, package manager, and ShaderGraph will be right here. This is all the list of everything that you can get from package manager, by the way, and it's going to get updated. There's going to be more things available. So you have ShaderGraph here. And again, this is free, because ShaderGraph is something that we got asked for so long because of all the artists that didn't want to get into shader programming but are still technical artists. And it's something that was heavily requested by the developers. So what we decided to do is we decided to work on it really hard, and we created ShaderGraph. So it's continuously being worked on. There's always updates on it. So check it out. The Unity version that I'm using at this moment is Unity 2018.1.0F1. So it's the latest release. So just to recap, we are basically starting with our idea in mind. We have our level design. We don't really know where we want to take our level, so we just make our own. We just make everything, our scene, through ProBuilder. So what we can do is maybe we have our character, we place it into the scene, and we make it walk around in ProBuilder while our scene is made out of ProBuilder. And maybe we're not happy with it. Instead of having to recreate our scene from scratch, we just make some modification through ProBuilder. And there is also the two tools that we talked about, and they are ProGrids and Polybrush. And these all allows you to do either complex or simple 3D modeling from within the engine. So you never need to leave the engine. Then we have the FBX Exporter, and this allows you still not to really leave the engine to transfer this game object that you created. You turn it into a prefab. You don't lose any of the components that it has attached to it, and you drag it onto Maya or 3ds Max or everything of your choice. This is by using the Autodesk plugin with Unity. And then from that, you import it back into Unity, and you can use ShaderGraph on it. So ShaderGraph allows you to create these crazy materials, everything through using just the nodes. So you don't really need to know. You saw it, I didn't do any programming for it, so everything is available already there. So these are some of the quotes that the developers who use this tool mentioned. I didn't mention, but ProBuilder was used for games such as Superhot and Manifold Garden that are some really, really famous games that are being developed and they're being worked on right now. These are just some of the things that they said, and they're really happy for us to keep working on them. And again, as I mentioned, ShaderGraph came because the developers asked for it. So it's really good for us to get some feedback, to know what you think about these tools, and to improve them depending on what you need. So it's very useful for us to give us some feedback regarding this. So this is everything from me. Down there you have a survey that you can complete, and we're going to have a prize draw at the end. We're going to give away T-shirts and notebooks and pens and a lot of swag. You can just go on bit.ly Unity DevGam, everything lowercase, and just give some feedback on this talk and tell us if you learned anything new. If you have any question that comes up later, you can email me, or that's my Twitter handle. Or if you have any question now, I will be happy to answer. So that's everything from me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Alessia. Okay, guys, do we have any questions? Any questions? Okay, come here, please, and ask.
Hello, thanks for the great
Thank you.
report. I have four questions. How well is the shader graph optimized for mobile?
Okay, I'm not entirely sure about this, but this is currently being worked on. So you should probably check in the blogs, because we currently post always the updates on ShaderGraph and on how all the updates that we're releasing for it. So there's going to be more information there.
Okay. What is better for mobile? Many small prefabs or the whole scene as the single object, as you're shown in the, from Maya?
I assume it would be just one single object.
Yeah.
Because there would be, don't quote me on this, maybe we can see it on the booth after, and there's going to be someone that knows better than me probably.
Okay. Can I edit vertex normals through ProBuilder?
You can do it through Polybrush, which is currently in beta. So you will be able to do it from there.
Thanks. Can I change shader through ShaderGraph after some event? Maybe the door is open.
So at runtime, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, you will be able to do it.
Thanks. That's all questions.
Okay, thank you. Any more? Oh, two more questions, okay.
Thanks for your speech. I just wanted to remind that ProBuilder is like 5 or so years already used by all big companies, so it doesn't change at all for companies like Pixonic, for example. But I have a question about ShaderGraph. If you look through this asset store, you can see that there are 4 or 5 similar assets that do the same, just maybe a bit in other way or maybe better. So why you bought ProBuilder but not bought assets that already in store for the ShaderGraph?
So I don't believe that we bought ProBuilder. I think we worked on it from scratch. So this is something Unity made.
You said that you bought
ProBuilder
no?
version 2 remade by Unity that does the same that ProBuilder in the store.
So there is already a ProBuilder available in the store. That's what you're saying?
Yeah.
The Unity version is free. So I think that's already a big thing.
So why you don't do the same for the ShaderGraph? Because, for example, the Shader Forge, Amplify, and so on that do literally the same. Just why you not get it from this team, buy and release from Unity?
Well, I guess there's some things that we have the resources to do. So for example, in this case, we were already working on ShaderGraph, so it made sense for us to keep working on it and to make it according to what the developers are asking for, rather than getting something that is already there and we don't have the power to change as the way it is already.
Okay, I just have some concerns about, as said previous guy, about performance. For example, multiple defines that can enlarge your shader to 10 or more megabytes on mobile. So it definitely has to be optimized to be usable on mobile. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, and the next question, okay.
Hello,
Hi.
Thank you for our presentation. I have almost the same question about mobile devices. Will it possible to profile shaders or to get some tips about performance of some nodes? So for example, if I use node with Fresnel effect, it is heavy for mobile, how I can understand or get some tips or metrics to understand to use or not use on mobiles.
So basically using ShaderGraph is like writing a shader yourself. So everything should be available on the profiler window. So you just select the rendering and you will be able to see how much that impacts the performance of the shader that you're creating.
Okay, thank you. And second question about Resolver, I mean project manager, as you say. Can I use this instrument to keep my own SDKs or packages and to install into Unity, or package manager is built only for Unity packages and Unity tools?
I believe it's built for Unity tools for now, but is that something that you would think it would be useful for your own packages? So would it be something that would make it useful for you to get your packages and import them into the project?
Yeah, I mean, maybe I can use this tool to resolve dependencies or to keep all my packages up to date in all projects.
As far as I know, it's not available for that yet. But yeah, it's only for the Unity tools for now, as far as I know. But if that's something that you think would be useful, I can pass the feedback to the team.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. One more question. Okay.
Thank you for your presentation. And my question is, what about the viewing maps in ProBuilder? So the objects that you created, do they have UV maps, or it's just a project shader, projection shader? Sorry.
So I'm going to go into the editor to show you that. So I didn't show all the things that ProBuilder offers, but there is an UV editor here that you can open, and then you can do all the modification from here. And also something that maybe it's not immediately intuitive, but if you change the selection tool from here, this will also change the tools that you have there. So you have different things depending on what you're selecting. So for faces, for example, I have extrude and everything. Different tools.
Okay. And one more question about the performance of ShaderGraph. For example, if I have the standard PBR shader, for example, little roughness workflow, and I have the same shader made with the ShaderGraph, the performance will be the same?
I'm not sure about that. Yeah, we can look at that after if you want, if you have your own project here. Yeah, you can come to the booth and talk to us after.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And there was one more. Oh, come here. If you have questions, you can just come here and wait in the line.
Thanks for the talk. I have a little question about ProBuilder. Okay. Can we edit meshes from Blender with ProBuilder?
So what you can do is you can export the game object as an FBX. So everything that you can import, and any software that allows you to import an FBX will be something that you will be able to modify. So you can use Blender, but you won't have the Autodesk plugin for it because Autodesk is only 3ds Max and Maya at the moment. So yeah, you can import it onto Blender using the FBX because everything that the FBX Exporter does is it creates the FBX and the prefab. So once you have a software that allows you to import that, you will be able to do it.
Cool, thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, any more questions? Okay. Oh, one more.
Thank you, Alessia, for a great talk. Tiny question about documentation of ShaderForge. Yeah.
ShaderGraph.
ShaderGraph, yes. Is some documentation available, like some info on every node included or something like this?
Yeah, so there is, I believe that at the moment is on GitHub. So if you go on the Unity Technologies GitHub page and you go on to the ShaderGraph, you should be able to see the documentation from there. But we're working on the documentation on the official Unity docs.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
And I think that will be all. Yes, thank you very much. Please rate the lecture on the exam site.